My husband died in a cruise accident 8 years ago. At least that's what I was told. That's what the Coast Guard report said. That's what the insurance company confirmed. That's what I believed when I stood at his memorial service, clutching a photograph because there was no body to bury. Lost at sea, they called it. A rogue wave, a tragic accident. A man swept overboard in the middle of the night, his body never recovered. I mourned him for 8 years. I raised our daughter alone. I rebuilt my life from the ashes of the one I thought we had built together. And then I saw him, standing on a cobblestone street in Florence, Italy, holding hands with another woman, while 2 children, twins, maybe 6 or 7 years old, ran circles around his legs, calling him Papa. My husband, Daniel Morrison, the man I had buried in my heart 8 years ago, alive, smiling, living the life he had stolen from me. My name is Vivienne Okafor Morrison. I am 47 years old. I was born in Accra, Ghana, and I came to America at 22 with a master's degree in architecture and a determination to build a life that mattered. I met Daniel Morrison at 31. He was charming, successful, a financial consultant who traveled the world helping wealthy clients manage their fortunes. We married after a year of what I thought was the most passionate love affair of my life. For 7 years, I believed we were happy. For 7 years, I trusted him completely. And then he died. Or so I thought. Let me tell you about the day Daniel died. It was our 7th wedding anniversary. We had booked a Mediterranean cruise, 2 weeks of luxury, visiting ports in Spain, France, Italy, and Greece. It was supposed to be a celebration of everything we had built together. Our daughter Amara was 6 years old at the time. She stayed with my mother while Daniel and I reconnected as a couple, something we had been struggling to do with the demands of careers and parenthood. The first week was perfect. Long dinners on the deck, dancing under the stars, making love in our cabin while the ship rocked gently on the waves. Daniel was attentive, romantic, everything I had fallen in love with. On the night of day 10, he suggested a walk on the upper deck. "It's beautiful tonight," he said. "Let's watch the moon over the water." We walked together, his arm around my shoulders. And then he said he wanted to check something in the cabin. His phone, he claimed, or maybe his wallet. The details were vague. "I'll be right back," he said. "Wait here." I waited, and waited, and waited. An hour passed, then 2. I went looking for him. Our cabin was empty. His phone was on the nightstand. His wallet was on the desk, but Daniel was gone. The ship searched for 6 hours before declaring him lost at sea. A crew member reported seeing a man matching Daniel's description near the stern, alone, around 2 a.m. The theory was that he had gone out for air and been swept overboard by a sudden swell. The Coast Guard searched for 3 days. They found nothing. No body, no trace. Just the vast, indifferent ocean, and a widow who couldn't understand how her husband had vanished on the happiest night of their marriage. The insurance payout was substantial. Daniel had taken out a life insurance policy 6 months before the cruise, $3 million with me as the sole beneficiary. At the time, I thought it was responsible planning. We had a young daughter, we had a mortgage. If something happened to either of us, we wanted the other to be protected. Now, looking back, I see it differently. Now I see a man who was planning his disappearance, a man who wanted to make sure his widow was taken care of, perhaps out of guilt, perhaps as part of some elaborate calculation I still don't fully understand. The $3 million was supposed to be my compensation for losing him. Instead, it was the price he put on abandoning me. The trip to Italy was Amara's idea. She was 14 now, 8 years older than when her father died. And she wanted to see the places he had always talked about. Florence, Rome, Venice, the cities he had visited for work, the places he had promised to take us someday. "It'll be like having a piece of him with us," she said. I agreed because I couldn't say no to my daughter. I agreed because I thought I had made peace with Daniel's death. I agreed because I had no idea what was waiting for me on a street in Florence. The moment I saw him, my body knew before my mind did. My heart stopped. My breath caught. My legs refused to move. I was standing outside a cafe waiting for Amara to finish ordering gelato when I looked across the piazza and saw a ghost. He was older, 8 years older, obviously, but unmistakably Daniel. The same height, the same posture, the same way of standing with his weight on his left leg, the same smile that had made me fall in love with him 17 years ago. He was smiling at a woman. Blonde, beautiful, European-looking. She was laughing at something, he said, her hand on his arm in that casual, possessive way that comes from years of intimacy. And the twins, a boy and a girl, matching dark hair, matching bright eyes, were tugging at his jacket, demanding attention. "Papa, Papa, gelato, you promised!" "Papa," they called him Papa. "Mom?" Amara's voice came from behind me. "Mom, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a—" She stopped. She had followed my gaze. She had seen him too. "Is that?" she whispered. "Mom, is that Dad?" I couldn't answer. I couldn't speak. I could only watch as the man who had died 8 years ago kissed the blonde woman on the cheek, picked up one of the twins, and walked away with his new family. His real family. The one he had chosen over us. I don't remember what happened next. Not clearly, anyway. I remember Amara grabbing my arm. I remember her voice, urgent and scared. I remember sitting down on the edge of a fountain, my vision swimming, my heart pounding so hard I thought I was having a cardiac event. "Mom, we need to follow him. We need to—" No. But that was Dad. That was definitely Dad. I know. So we need to confront him. We need to ask him what— Not like this. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Not when we don't know anything. Not when he could disappear again. But, Amara, listen to me. I looked at my daughter. This beautiful girl I had raised alone. This young woman who had spent 8 years believing her father was dead. If that was your father, he's been living a lie for almost a decade. He's built a new life, a new family. He's clearly not planning to be found. If we confront him now, he could run. He could disappear again. And we'd never know the truth. So what do? I thought about it. We watch. We gather information. And then we decide how to handle this. You sound like you're planning a military operation. I am. This is war, Amara. And your father— I almost choked on the word. Your father made the first strike when he let us believe he was dead. We spent 3 days following him. It wasn't difficult. Daniel, or whoever he was now, had a routine. He walked the twins to school every morning. He met the blonde woman for coffee at the same cafe every afternoon. He picked up the children, took them to the park, and returned to a beautiful apartment in a historic building near the Ponte Vecchio. He was living the life of a wealthy expat. Art on the walls, designer furniture, a closet full of Italian suits. How was he paying for it? Where had the money come from? I had a theory, a dark, ugly theory that I didn't want to believe, but I needed proof. On the 4th day, I called the only person I trusted to help me, Samuel Washington, a private investigator in Atlanta who had helped me with a business matter years ago, thorough, discreet, relentless. "Samuel, I need you to look into someone for me." "Of course. What's the name?" "Daniel Morrison, my husband." A pause. "Vivian. Daniel passed away 8 years ago. I'm looking at him right now. He's alive, Samuel. He's living in Florence with a new wife and children, and I need to know everything." Another pause. "I'll be on the next flight." Samuel arrived in Florence 2 days later. He brought a colleague, a woman named Catherine who specialized in financial forensics, and together they began unraveling the web of lies Daniel had woven. What they found was worse than I had imagined. Daniel hadn't just faked his death, he had planned it for years. The $3 million insurance policy wasn't generosity. It was guilt money, a payoff to make his disappearance easier to swallow. But that was just the beginning. Before the cruise, Daniel had been embezzling money from his clients for over a decade. Small amounts at first, easily hidden in the complexity of international finance. Then larger amounts as his confidence grew. By the time he died, he had stolen over $47 million. The money was funneled through shell companies, offshore accounts, cryptocurrency exchanges. It bounced around the world until it became virtually untraceable. Virtually. Catherine was very, very good at her job. She traced the money to a series of accounts in Switzerland, the Cayman Islands, and, ultimately, Italy. The apartment in Florence, bought with stolen money. The art on the walls, purchased at auction with funds embezzled from a pension fund in Ohio. The beautiful life Daniel was living, built on the financial ruin of people who had trusted him. "There's more," Samuel said on day 8 of the investigation. "The woman he's with, her name is Isabella Marchetti. They've been together for 12 years. 12 years, but Daniel and I were married. For 7 of those years, yes. He was living a double life, Vivian, traveling between you and Isabella, maintaining 2 separate families. The twins. They're almost 8 years old, born about 6 months after Daniel died. 6 months, which meant Isabella was pregnant when Daniel staged his disappearance, which meant he had abandoned me, abandoned Amara, so he could be with his pregnant mistress and his stolen fortune. Everything I thought I knew about my marriage was a lie. I had 2 choices. I could confront Daniel directly, scream at him, demand answers, let him know that I knew everything, but that would give him time to run again, time to move the money, time to disappear into another identity in another country, or I could take a different approach, a patient approach, a devastating approach. I chose option 2. The first step was contacting the FBI, Financial Crimes Division. They had been investigating a series of embezzlement cases for years, but had never been able to connect them. The amounts were too small individually, spread across too many jurisdictions. I gave them Daniel Morrison. I gave them the account numbers Catherine had traced. I gave them the connection they needed to unravel everything. The second step was contacting the insurance company. $3 million. Paid out based on a fraudulent death claim. That's called insurance fraud. That's a federal crime. The third step was contacting the victims. The pension fund in Ohio, the retirement accounts in Michigan, the college savings plans in California, people who had lost everything because my husband was a thief. I connected them with lawyers who specialized in recovery. I helped them understand what had happened to their money. I became their advocate, their ally, their champion. Because if I couldn't get justice for myself, I could at least help them get theirs. The fourth step was the hardest, telling Amara everything. We sat in our hotel room, a modest place, nothing like the luxury Daniel was enjoying, and I told my daughter the truth. Her father was alive. Her father was a thief. Her father had abandoned us for another woman, another family, another life. She didn't cry. I expected tears. I expected anger. I expected some kind of emotional explosion. Instead, she sat very still for a very long time. Then she said, "I want to see him one more time before they arrest him." Why? Because I need to look him in the eyes. I need him to know that I know. I need to see if there's anything left of the father I remember. And if there isn't, then at least I'll know, and I can stop wondering. I couldn't deny her that. The arrest was coordinated with precision. Italian authorities, FBI agents, Interpol representatives. They planned to take Daniel at his apartment early morning when the children would be at school and the impact could be minimized. But I had made a request. Before the arrest, 10 minutes before, to be exact, Amara and I would knock on his door. The authorities agreed. I think they understood that some confrontations need to happen for the victims to move forward. The morning was cool and gray. Florence looked different than it had when I first saw Daniel on that cobblestone street. Less magical, more ordinary. Just a city where a man had hidden from his crimes. We climbed the stairs to his apartment. I knocked. Footsteps. A pause. The click of a lock. The door opened, and Daniel Morrison, the man I had married, mourned, and believed dead for 8 years, stared at me with the face of a stranger. "Vivian." His voice was the same, deeper, maybe, touched with an Italian accent he must have acquired over the years. "Hello, Daniel. What are you, Dad?" Amara's voice cut through his confusion. He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time. The 6-year-old he had left behind was now a young woman, 14 years old, his eyes, his cheekbones, his daughter. "Amara," his voice cracked. "My God, Amara, you're so—" "Don't." Her voice was cold, colder than I had ever heard it. "I spent 8 years thinking you were dead, 8 years missing you, 8 years watching Mom cry on your anniversary, 8 years believing you loved me. I did love you. I do love you. You left me. You faked your death, and you left me. You let me grow up without a father so you could play house with someone else. It's complicated." "It's not complicated." Amara stepped closer to him. "You stole money from people. You abandoned your family. You started a new life with a new woman and new children. None of that is complicated. It's just evil." Amara, please. Let me explain. There's nothing to explain. I came here for one reason, to look at you and see if there was anything left of the man I thought was my father. She studied his face. There isn't. You're just a stranger who looks like someone I used to love. She turned to me. I'm done. We can go now. I nodded. But before I left, I had my own words to say. Daniel, in about 8 minutes, federal agents are going to knock on this door. You're going to be arrested for embezzlement, fraud, and insurance fraud. You're going to be extradited to the United States, and you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison. His face went white. You can't. I already did. I gave them everything. The account numbers, the shell companies, the connection to the missing funds. They've been looking for this case for years, and I handed it to them on a silver platter. Vivian, please. Think about what you're doing. I've thought about it for 8 years. Every night when I couldn't sleep. Every time I had to explain to our daughter why her father wasn't coming home. Every moment I spent rebuilding a life you destroyed. I stepped back toward the door. You wanted to disappear, Daniel. Now you will. Into a federal prison for the rest of your life. The children, my children with Isabella, will grow up knowing the truth about who their father is. Just like Amara did. At least they'll have the advantage of knowing from the beginning. I heard footsteps on the stairs. The agents were arriving. Goodbye, Daniel. I'd say I hope you rot in prison, but that seems redundant. You've already been rotting from the inside for decades. The prison will just make it official. Amara and I walked past the agents as they moved toward the door. I heard Daniel's voice, pleading, desperate, cut off by the words, "You have the right to remain silent." And then we walked down the stairs, out into the gray Florence morning, and I finally felt free. The trial was covered extensively by the media. Daniel Morrison, the financial consultant who faked his death, stole $47 million and built a secret life in Italy. The victims testified. The FBI presented evidence. The insurance company demanded restitution. Isabella, Daniel's Italian wife, was not charged. She claimed she didn't know about his past, and prosecutors found no evidence to contradict her. She divorced him immediately, took the children, and disappeared from public view. I hope for her sake and for the twins that she finds some peace. Daniel was sentenced to 35 years in federal prison. He'll be 93 when he's eligible for parole. He'll die behind bars. Part of me expected to feel satisfied by that. I didn't. I just felt tired. Tired of the lies. Tired of the betrayal. Tired of being the woman who was fooled by a man she loved. But then I looked at Amara, this incredible young woman who had faced her father with courage I could barely imagine. And I realized something. I wasn't a fool. I was a survivor. I had raised a daughter alone. I had built a career. I had discovered the truth when I could have looked away, and I had ensured that Daniel Morrison would never hurt anyone again. That wasn't foolishness. That was strength. It's been 2 years since Daniel's arrest. Amara is 16 now, finishing high school, planning to study law. So I can help people like the ones Dad hurt, she says. I've returned to architecture, designing buildings that will stand long after I'm gone. And I've started speaking at conferences for fraud victims, sharing my story, helping others understand that they're not alone. The hardest part, I tell them, isn't discovering the truth. It's accepting that the person you loved never really existed. The Daniel I married was a character he played. The real Daniel was always the man in Florence, calculating, selfish, willing to destroy lives for his own benefit. How do you move forward, someone always asks. By realizing that his choices don't define you. You didn't know. You couldn't have known. And when you found out, you did the right thing. What's the right thing? Whatever brings you peace. For some people, that's forgiveness. For others, it's justice. I pause. Well, for me, it was making sure he could never do this to anyone else. That was my peace. That was my closure. Last month, I received a letter from Daniel, written from federal prison. 7 pages of apologies and explanations, and pleas for understanding. He said he had loved me, truly loved me, but he had been trapped by his own lies. He said the embezzlement started small, a way to cover a bad investment, and spiraled out of control. He said leaving us was the hardest thing he ever did, but he thought we'd be better off believing he was dead than knowing the truth. He said he had never stopped thinking about Amara. He asked if she might visit him. I read the letter once. Then I burned it. And I never told Amara it existed. Some doors need to stay closed forever. If this story resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and whether you've ever had to face a truth that changed everything. Like and subscribe for more stories about betrayal, resilience, and the strength it takes to rebuild when everything you believed is destroyed. Lost at sea. That's what they told me when my husband disappeared from a cruise ship 8 years ago. Lost at sea. I mourned him. I raised our daughter alone. I rebuilt my life from nothing. And then I saw him, standing on a street in Florence, holding hands with another woman, while 2 children called him Papa. He wasn't lost. He was hiding from the life he abandoned, hiding from the $47 million he stole, hiding from me. But I found him. And when I did, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I made a phone call. 8 minutes later, federal agents knocked on his door. You have the right to remain silent. 35 years. That's his sentence. He'll die in prison. And I'll live, knowing that the man who faked his death to escape his lies finally got exactly what he deserved.